what is a protocol? And especially when we talk about a network, you can use the answer. It's okay. It's all right. I promise. I'll give you candy.
A set of rules and operations.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And when we talk about it, careful. In terms of the network, we're talking about moving information from one state to the next and how to do that in a secure fashion with a protocol. What are those rules and guidelines for doing that? We're going to talk about two different kinds of reference models. The OSI 7-layer model, which is most familiar, it's most ubiquitous in the industry. We'll briefly mention the TCP/IP model, which is not the same as the TCP/IP protocol because people in our industry like to reuse terms just to confuse ourselves. I don't know why we do it, but we do it well. How many times is the acronym MAC used in IT security? Who can think of one meaning?
Media access
Mandatory access control.
Mandatory access control. Media access control.
Message authentication code.
Ooh, good. And Macintosh, right? I mean, we got a whole bunch of IT nerdiness going on in just those three letters. Let's get confusing, shall we? Good. What are the implications for multi-layer protocols, protocols that go across different layers in one of these models? Obviously, you got to secure each one of those levels when you're moving that data. And that makes things tricky, very, very tricky. And we're going to talk a lot about network security architecture. Here is a beautiful, don't make fun of my graphics, beautiful depiction of the OSI 7-layer model. Anyone have a great mnemonic for remembering what? No, it can't be filthy, Andy.
It's not filthy.
Okay. What is it?
People don't need to see Paula Abdul.
That's excellent, actually.
That's my favorite.
That's very, very good. It's good that you picked up your coffee because I was aiming for it. That's really good. In OSI, travels down the stack, moves over to wherever you're moving it to, and goes back up. At each place, you're adding something to the header. As it goes down and it comes back over, you pull those pieces off the header as well. It's just a mirror image. Layer 1, physical. The actual hardware itself, the things you can touch. When we're talking about securing this level, we're talking about the actual fundamental intrinsic properties of the components themselves, and we're talking about the topology. How are they laid out? Implementation that we're seeing in modern OSI Layer 1, both cable, that's fiber optic cable, and wireless. Wireless is huge. Wireless is pretty soon going to be the only way to go. Layer 2, the data link layer. Most of our implementation, we're going to be talking about encryption. That's the name of the game for today's state of Layer 2. Layer 3, we're going to look at the WAN. We're going to look at risks and attacks from IP fragmentation and crafted packets. And we're going to talk about tunneling as a way to attenuate those risks. Layer 4 is the transport layer. We're going to look at some of the scanning techniques and the denial service. We talked a little bit about those when we talked about access control. We're going to get deeper into it here. At 5, we're going to talk about directory services. We talked about some of those standards already. And we're going to talk about access services. 6, talk about the concepts and the tech and implementation, same as the other layers. And in 7, we're going to talk about messaging. We're going to talk about moving data from one place to another. We talk about administrative services and information services. Other than the OSI model, we also have the TCP/IP model. The layers don't map exactly one-to-one, obviously, because there's only 4 in TCP/IP. But these are mostly how they stack up against each other. Who uses TCP/IP? The model. Who?
DoD.
DoD mainly. Pretty much everybody else uses OSI, And largely in the DoD, where I've sat, they used OSI. It's the most ubiquitous one. All right. The network itself can be a target, can be a tool in the attack, or it can be a way to defend against attacks. We've already seen that it's a target when it comes to denial of service, and that's both physical or logical attacks. If I take a bolt cutters and I can get to your fiber optic line, are you being denied service? Yes, absolutely. It's the same thing as if I was able to give you a SYN flood or something to that effect. Using your network against you. Before we get into that in detail, does anyone have an idea of how that would be implemented? If I penetrate one part of your network, can I get access to others? Yes. Yes, absolutely. We'll show how that works too. And defending against these attacks. We talked about security domains and splitting things up according to both their operational function and the value of their information. That's your domains. Segregating security domains. Isolating them from each other so that there's no single point of failure. Just because an attacker gains access to one domain doesn't mean they have access to all of them. Responding to incidents on your network. Can you contain that so once they do breach, it doesn't spread to everything? Protecting assets by configuring it properly at the network level, and using either contingency, a way to fall back to a different sort of configuration, or network diversity to attenuate attacks. When we talk about diversity, again, we're talking about that same kind of defense in depth. Just because they get access to one thing doesn't mean that they have access to everything because their tool set doesn't work across the entire architecture. This is a pretty piece of clip art. Stand in awe of my clip art. It is beautiful. Each aspect of the triad, what's our triad again? CIA, which stands for?
Confidentiality, integrity, availability.
Excellent. Very good. All right. When it comes to the network, confidentiality is affected by the threat of eavesdropping. If someone can sit on your network and look at the traffic, that's called eavesdropping. We talked a little bit about that before. How do you protect the network from that threat? Security protocols, that is, what procedures, guidelines, and processes are you going to use to secure that traffic? And encryption. Remember we talked about how NIDs can't work as well if the traffic along the line is encrypted? Same thing here. Integrity on your network. Talked about man-in-the-middle attacks. If someone sits between two trusted objects, a user and a machine, a user and a service, a user and an application, and can observe that traffic long enough, they can mimic one of those objects and continue the conversation along lines they want to do. That's a man-in-the-middle attack. They can intercept and modify that data. How do you attenuate that threat? We talked about access control. If they can't get in between either of those things, if they can't read that information, that slows it down. Intrusion detection services. Once they are on, your IDS can identify an attacker posing as a trusted source. And again, encryption or checksum. As we talked about, data that's modified in a way that's not allowed can show up on the checksum. Availability. The network threat from availability is, of course, denial of service. That is the very nature of the denial of service attack, is to make sure that the victim is not allowed to use their network. How do you protect against that? What's fault tolerant mean? Don't give me the 6th grade answer. It doesn't break just because something went wrong, right? Good. It's a robust system. And that should come from the vendor. That should be part of your requirements before acquisition, right? Load balancing means what?
Basically spreading out the load across multiple systems so that no one isn't getting hit with everything.
That's it. That's exactly it. Very good. Diverse network connections. Are we talking about having both Cat5 and wireless? No. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Diverse network connections.
Two different providers?
Yes. Yeah. Or same provider, two different mediums. Yeah. It's just having that extra backup, that extra reassurance from your organization out. And help from those providers. Knowing that they are able to give you BCP or DR support, either by contract or by agreement. If they can help identify attacks or they can help respond to attacks. Sometimes, depending on the level of the DDoS attack, it's got to be stopped at the provider level. If it even makes it to your organization, you're blacked out just because people can't reach your services, much less the fact that you couldn't cope with it. So these are something that they should be aware of, and really, realistically, after the 2000 attacks, the Mafia Boy, the huge DOS attacks, they're mostly ready for it. They anticipate these things. All right. One of the things that it's best to know that we were talking about is to identify threats. We talked about how to identify threats. Let's talk about how to understand how an attack takes place. This is one way of diagramming an attack. First, target acquisition, meaning how do they pick who the target is? Anyone know how Anonymous picks who a target is?
Apparently at random.
It would seem that way, wouldn't it?
Whoever speaks out against him.
Yeah.
Pisses them off the most.
Yeah. Both of those things. They crowdsource it among themselves. They go into IRC. They actually have rooms where they sit and they discuss who are we going to attack this week, Pinky, that kind of thing. And they actually pick it and they discuss it and they go over it. Now, does this mean that necessarily once they make that decision, they're all for it and they all go? No. Obviously, they're all volunteers. They don't have to take part in anything. Does it mean just because it gets voted down, it won't be attacked? No. But it does mean that at least there's some method that they're using to come to an agreement to who they're going to go after. I heard an excellent radio program about this, and they actually watched one of these things unfold as the discussion took place. And a lot of it had to do with PR, how they felt about the target. I mean, it was just pure, the propaganda efforts of that organization either made it safe or made it victim to their targeting. So they have to acquire who they're going to go after. And that can be for any number of reasons. What are the big motivators? What are big motivators for attacks, IT-based attacks?
Money?
Money. Number one motivator, right? Yes, absolutely. The ones that we talked about, the TJ Maxx one, the Choice Point ones, those were all money-based. They wanted credit cards. They want personally identifiable information. Good. What else?
Shame.
Yeah. Sometimes they really want to just browbeat the victim. My PS3 went down the day after I returned home from the last class I taught here. All week I had been jonesing to play my PS3, and by the time I got home, I couldn't. And it stayed down for like 2 weeks, right? Why did they go after PS3? Why did they go after Sony?
They couldn't beat Grand Theft Auto?
It depends on who you ask. I mean,
DRM was a big part of it.
yeah.
Some PS3 users were being prosecuted for jailbreaking some of the hardware. What's that?
GeoHot. The name of the hacker.
Oh, that was the name of that? Okay. Yeah, and evidently the hacker community did not like the fact that Sony was enforcing its rights over its copyrighted material, and so they were going to punish Sony and show them what for. Those darn kids and their meddling dog. All right. Shame, money, what else we got? Secrets, yeah. And sometimes that's just because it's the fun of the thing to do. I like to expose secrets. I want to know what's going on behind door number 3, right? Good. Pride.
Fame.
We all know GeoHot's name now, don't we? Yeah. Thank you, Andy. That was good. Same thing with Mafia Boy, Kevin Mitnick. Makes a pretty good couple of bucks now, consulting, right? Because he got famous. Some of it's nation state. There is an element of it there. Some of it is that countries do spy on other countries to try to get information, either commercial or military. Good. All right. So they've picked who their target is. They start doing the analysis. What kind of information do they want to gather during the analysis phase?
Vulnerabilities.
Say again?
Vulnerabilities.
Vulnerabilities. Good. Even general pictures can help find what the vulnerabilities are. I want to know what kind of OS you have. I want to know what kind of hardware you have. I want to know how many nodes you have. I want to know where you do business. So maybe you have remote locations. Maybe those are easier to get into than your headquarters. You want to get as much information about the target as possible because that makes your attack that much more easy, right? All right, after that, access. That's when they start breaking in or break in. Appropriation. Big word, Andy. What's it mean?
And you're gathering things.
Yeah, okay, yeah. They're collecting machines. They're collecting user IDs. They're collecting data, yeah. They're actually owning the targets. And that's number 5. I've got you completely. Once you're in, you can get down and you can create backdoors, you can get root access, you can do all sorts of things, right? Good. That's how the guide diagrams the attack. So, from a network perspective, how are we going to secure these things? We talked about HIDs and NIDs, host-based intrusion detection system, network-based intrusion detection system. Signature-based doesn't work for what kind of exploits?
0 day.
0 day, good, because they don't exist yet. And we also have anomalous IDS, looking for something that just doesn't smell right, right? Security event management and security event and incident management are systems that can aggregate this information for you and use it in simple interfaces and control panels and help you gather the data in a way that makes it easier to analyze. What other tools can you use? Well, you can use scanners. What does a scanner do?
Probes, ports.
What's that?
Probes for ports.
Good.
Ports.
Good. Look for ports. Look for machines. Excellent. It's a way of identifying assets in an organization. Discovery scanning is just like it sounds. I want to see what's out there. I want to just realize that it exists. Compliance scanning is what you can do as a security professional to find out whether or not your policies are being enforced. Would a scanner do that? Sure. If I don't want FTP on my network and my policy says turn it off completely, can a scanner go and find out whether those are open? Yeah. Is that useful? Of course. Vulnerability scanning. Very similar to compliance scanning, I can go and look for known weaknesses in a network and determine whether or not those exist on mine, right? These tools seem very similar to what the attackers are using. Why is that?
It is what the attackers are using.
It is what the attackers are using. Very good, Andy. Yes, absolutely. A sword cuts both ways, right? Just depends who's holding it. Common tools, Nessus and Nmap. Anyone ever used either one of them? Good. Easy to use?
Yeah. I mean, we use Nessus, but we also use Encircle.
Oh, I don't know Encircle. Is it
Yeah, it does the vulnerability, compliance,
Good.
security discovery, all that.
good? A lot of it automated and nice graphical display.
Yeah, they have a whole reporting thing for the graphical display.
Isn't that the best? When you show the management
right.
graphics, they
It's
just
better
they eat
for
that
the
up.
people that need to do the patching and fixing and that,
Excellent. Good. And a network tap, just like it sounds, like tapping a phone, wiretapping. You can grab data going across a wire, right?